Hey guys, today's podcast episode, I want to talk about a movie that I absolutely adore called Spirited Away. It's a Miyazaki movie, and I actually, right before this episode, finished watching it with my kids. And if you have not seen this, first of all, I'm going to talk about some lessons that I've learned from watching this film. There are so many lessons to be learned. So I'm just going to put it in the context of like some things that I got from it. But if you have not watched a Miyazaki film, first of all, and you're a designer, go watch any of his films. But I do think Spirited Away is an amazing one to start with. It will open your eyes to something very original. At least those of us in Western culture are very original. But there's some really beautiful things about it that make it just a really fantastic film. And the artwork in it is phenomenal. So my family were big Miyazaki fans. And the first movie we ever watched when my children were really little was Spirited Away. And I cannot recommend it enough. So 3 lessons I want to talk about this film, and I did write a couple of notes so I wouldn't get way off topic because I do want to be brief here. But one of the lessons that I learned, let's start really quickly with this. The premise of the entire show is there is a little girl who is her name is Chihiro, and I'm sure I said that wrong, and she is with her parents in a car making a transition in life. They're moving from another city to a little city, and they accidentally get on the wrong path and get out of their car to a very old looking train station. And they go through this little gateway onto the other side, and they find this world that, there's these beautiful like green landscapes, but there's a bathhouse there. And when they get over there, the parents begin to eat the food. They're going to pay with their credit card, and antics ensue. Basically, she gets stuck over there. Her parents are turned into other creatures. I'm going to let you watch it if you haven't seen. And she has to figure out a way to get out of this world. She's a little girl. She kind of shows up really, really whiny and grumpy when we start the film. And by the end, she is mature and has gone through a lot. And I think that's why the film is so beautiful, because you see her transition from like kind of unable to do anything herself to figuring out how to take control, and lots of sad stuff along the way that makes you feel like this sadness, but also this like feeling of like growing up. So it's absolutely beautiful. The characters in it, the colors in it are absolutely amazing. So I cannot recommend it enough. Okay, so lesson number 1, I think when we step out of our own cultural norms, we can see things that we normally wouldn't see. And I think that's part of the reason I got on here today to say, go watch a Miyazaki film or go watch any other film. Many of you know, or maybe none of you know, that my mom is Chinese. And so I have a great love for Asian films in general. I like Chinese films, Korean films, and I love certain pieces of anime because it helps me step out of what I currently live in Western society and kind of see something that's a little different, the way they behave, the cultural norms. And I really think with Spirited Away in particular, I remember watching it, and it's even more fantastical than I think, if you watch like a Korean drama. But what I like about it is that you see all of these interesting like characters, like gods and stuff coming off and coming into the bathhouse. And I looked at them and it was like I was seeing new shapes. I was seeing new colors, like the way they built all these creatures. There's like this radish god, and he has this funny little red hat on his head and this funny little tail, and he's kind of large and chubby, and he's kind of sweet and cute, and kind of it helps them along their way. And it's really fun to kind of step out of my own cultural norm and kind of see a totally different world, because what happens is my own creativity is super sparked from that. And I always think in any kind of foreign film that you can watch is actually very helpful. And I think Netflix has figured this out about me because they keep showing me lots of different foreign films, not just Asian dramas, but like stuff in Europe and so forth. And it's been actually awesome because I get recommendations for things from across the world. And I think it helps me step out of my own cultural norms, which gives me great ideas for design work. So if you're at a loss and you're not feeling very inspired and you feel like you're seeing the same thing over and over again, which by the way, you guys, happens, especially when you look on Pinterest, it's like all the same stuff. You notice how like you see like a really big show come on that everybody loves, and then suddenly everybody's houses look exactly the same. It happens in all realms of design. And so one of the things you need to do to break it up is go do something you normally wouldn't do. Go watch something you normally wouldn't watch and get inspired by other cultures, other things that are going on out there. I think it's really, really helpful. Okay. Number 2, I think with the kids, we kind of dug into some YouTube videos as we were kind of watching, like, what does that mean? And what does that mean? And why did they do that? And one of the things I realized in my own design work, I've been working on a couple of new things. And as I was looking at it, I was really surprised at my own cultural influence in my own work. And it's not like the super noticeable thing. It's not like you could like directly pin it to something, but I do think that that when I'm paying attention to the way I'm designing, if I'm looking and trying to design from a certain era, or I'm finding artwork that I'm doing that kind of feels like it's, the colors represent a period of time out there, I find myself not very aware that I'm even doing it. And I think that one of the things that Spirited Away did for me was I started to pay attention to my own cultural influences and the way I look at things, not just so I could break things up for myself, but also so I could just be aware of it. Like when I'm designing something, today I was doing all these leaves and I had like 3 or 4 layers of colors on them. And I was like, this is so interesting because I really draw my leaves very similarly every time. Go look at my old fabric lines and you'll notice that a lot of my leaves are very similar. It's just the way I doodle and the way I move that my pen, and I'm not sure where it comes from, but like just paying attention to kind of my own stylistic things. If you watch several Miyazaki films, you'll notice the style continues between the films, and some of them are styled a little bit differently, but just kind of seeing the referencing. I think that people, well, especially designers, when they come to me and they ask me like, I don't have a specific style, I'm like, that's not a bad thing. And you probably do, you just don't realize it because other people can see it, you just can't see it. And that's what I found about my own work, that at the end of the day, I tend towards certain colors. I tend towards certain forms, right? And those end up in my work over and over and over again. The same is happening for you as a designer, and you're not even realizing that that's happening, okay? All right, number 3, I am not so good at this. So this is why I want to bring this up. But there are several underlying themes in this movie. So if you watch this movie, you're going to see this theme of growing up and becoming responsible and kind of all the sadness that is involved when you do that. I think that really struck me because the film actually ends relatively happily, but there's all this sadness underlying all the things. It's like beautiful sadness though. So that's why I want to recommend it. But also they have themes of, cleanliness. They're talking about there's a water god who they think is a stink god to begin with. And when they get him cleaned up, they were able to clean out this particular god was able to go away with his water all nice and clean. There's this whole theme of love and the love between two people as they take care of each other and try to help each other out. And I also love the underlying theme of greed. So throughout, you see with the bathhouse. So those of you who haven't watched this, you're not going to know this, but like you'll notice it if you watch it after this podcast episode. But Yubaba, who's the owner of the bathhouse, she Haku, who is a dragon who works for her, comes in and says, you don't even notice this precious thing that's missing from you. And the first thing she looks at is her gold, not her baby, which her baby is the thing that's missing. But she looks at her gold and just like examines it, which really shows quite a bit about Yubaba. A little bit later, she realizes that it's her baby. Like, it only takes her a few minutes after that to realize her baby is missing. But you'll see that theme over and over again. There's a very interesting character called No Face, who kind of reflects everybody else's emotions and reflects everybody else's things. And when he's just with Chihiro, like, he's very mild and meek-mannered. But when he's in the bathhouse, he is reflecting everybody else's greed. And he becomes very, very large. He's eating people. He's eating all the stuff they're giving her. Giving him, and it's really, really gross. And kind of this underlying, also with her parents eating the bathhouse's food for the gods that are coming in and what happens to them. So it's so interesting because a lot of my work, if you guys know, a lot of my work is actually florals. I do some dingbats and fonts, and sometimes when I'm designing, I'm just designing for the fun of it. In fact, most of the time I'm designing, I'm just designing, having a good time doing it. But I was thinking about this particular line I'm currently working on, and I'm about to go on a couple of trips. And I really told myself to be okay with being influenced with the things that I was seeing on these trips. It was okay to be influenced and capture the era of all the things that I was seeing, because I think that when we put a story behind our design work, it's just stronger. And I will be the first to tell you, I am not the best about doing this for all of my design work, but I do try to do it for some of my bigger collections and bigger lines. And even if nobody knows what that story is, and very often they don't, I know what that story is. And it really helps me form these beautiful things that I probably wouldn't have come up with, because I've got this story in my head about who's using this design, who made this design, why they want it. And it makes for a really, really wonderful way to do some of your design work. That's all I have for you today. If you've heard these references I'm talking about and you're like, I have never seen this, and it sounds like a crazy film, I cannot recommend enough that you go and watch it. It's so, so beautiful. The artwork is fantastic. The colors are fantastic. The characters are very intriguing. And after just watching it again, after I watched another Asian drama, which was a little bit slower, I realized just really how fantastical Spirited Away is, because the action is moving really, really quickly. I also want to recommend to go on YouTube at some point and go watch some explanations for Spirited Away. I saw all kinds of things people were writing in the comments that were super fascinating to me, things I didn't understand. For example, the name Chihiro, she loses that name. Yubaba takes her name from her and only leaves one character left. And Yubaba takes the name so she can control her. But I guess the name Chihiro is, I can't remember exactly the meaning of it, but it's used often in rivers and lakes to describe them, and mountains. And there's another reference where she falls into a river and has this interaction with Haku that relates to her name. There's some of those little details that are really beautiful and things I didn't understand because I don't know Japanese culture. And so go watch that. It'll open your mind to a few other things as well. And I hope you enjoyed this. It's a little bit off of what I normally do, but I just had such a good time rewatching that movie. And if you want other recommendations, right before I leave, I'm going to give you some other recommendations of Miyazaki movies that I think are really fantastic. My actual favorite is Howl's Moving Castle. Really beautifully done. Kiki's Delivery Service. Ponyo. My daughter's favorite she has two favorites, Castle in the Sky and The Secret World of Arrietty. Absolutely stunning films, and hopefully will inspire you, kind of take you out of your comfort zone into doing something new and different in your design work. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're on our YouTube channel, I'd love for you to subscribe. Would love to give you more fun content, especially about design and the world of design and how we can get inspired by it. If you're on the podcast, I would love for you to leave a review. If you are on one of the other, come visit us on the other, the channel that will make sense for you. The podcast is great for driving around and doing all the things, cooking, etc., and having it running in the background so we can talk about design together. And it's just called the Make and Design Podcast with Carina Gardner. All right, guys, thanks. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you guys later.
Hey, did you know that you can visit me at makeanddesign.com to learn more about this podcast and join my VIP group for weekly freebies? I can't wait to see you there.